Over 36,000 years before Luke Skywalker destroyed the Death Star, the galaxy was a very different place. Most worlds were isolated from one another. Hyperspace travel was primitive. Entire civilizations lived and died without ever leaving their home systems. But one civilization had already begun building an empire unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Rakata. Using dark side-infused technology, the Rakata established the Infinite Empire, conquering and enslaving countless worlds across the stars. At its height, the Infinite Empire ruled much of the known galaxy through fear and domination. But far from Rakatan territory, something extraordinary was happening. Across the galaxy, giant pyramid-shaped vessels known as the Tho-Yor suddenly appeared. No one knew who created them. No one knew why they existed. Yet wherever they went, they gathered force-sensitive individuals from many different species and cultures. The Tho-Yor carried these people across the stars and brought them to a single destination, Tython, a world overflowing with the Force. There, these early settlers formed an order known as the Jedi, the direct ancestors of the Jedi. But unlike the Jedi who would come later, the Jedi believed true understanding came from studying both sides of the Force. They called the light side Ashla. They called the dark side Bogan. Neither was considered evil. Instead, the Jedi sought balance between them. For centuries, the system worked, but it wouldn't last forever. Meanwhile, the Infinite Empire continued expanding. Among the Rakata's most feared servants were Force-sensitive hunters known as Force Hounds, and none were more dangerous than a warrior named Zesh. Raised by the Rakata from childhood, Zesh knew only conquest and violence. His mission was simple: find new worlds for the Infinite Empire to enslave. But during one of his hunts, Zesh began experiencing visions of a mysterious world, Tython. When he finally arrived there, everything changed. For the first time in his life, he encountered people who viewed him as more than a weapon. Through his interactions with the Jedi, and especially a young ranger named Koda, Zesh began questioning everything he had been taught. Unfortunately, the Rakata soon discovered Tython as well, and they came to conquer it. The Rakatan invasion marked the first great war in Tython's history. The Jedi found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. Advanced technology, massive armies, centuries of military experience. As war spread across the planet, many Jedi began drawing more heavily on Bogan, the dark side of the Force. Fear, anger, aggression, the very emotions they had spent centuries trying to balance. Although the Jedi ultimately survived the invasion, the damage had already been done. The war changed them, and it planted the seeds for an even greater conflict. After the Rakata were defeated, the Jedi became increasingly divided. Some believed the dark side had saved Tython and should be embraced. Others believed it was too dangerous to trust. The balance that had held their civilization together for thousands of years began to collapse. Eventually, these disagreements erupted into civil war, a conflict known as the Force Wars. The Jedi turned against one another, and because Tython was so deeply connected to the Force, the planet itself reacted. Massive storms, earthquakes, natural disasters. The Force itself seemed to cry out as the Jedi destroyed everything they had built. By the end of the war, one painful truth had become impossible to ignore. The old way had failed. The survivors realized that balance alone wasn't enough. The dark side was simply too dangerous. So they abandoned the Jedi Order and created something entirely new, the Jedi Order. Unlike their predecessors, The Jedi dedicated themselves fully to the light side of the Force, to peace, compassion, discipline, and service to others. The philosophy that would guide generations of Jedi, from Yoda to Obi-Wan Kenobi to Luke Skywalker, was born from the lessons learned during the fall of the Jedi. One age was ending, and another was just beginning.